Hello, Katie Hilton here, the baby expert. So I'm here to talk to you about the top questions that I've been asked about parents related to feeding over the last month. So I will run through these questions and just give you my answers so that if you have a similar question, then obviously you will know what to do then. So the first question I'm going to jump in with here that I've been asked this last month is, how much formula does my baby need? Now, newborn babies need quite small amounts of formula because their tummy is actually quite small. So when they're first born, they only need a small amount. So by the end of the first week, most babies need about 150 to 200 mils per kilo of their weight across a 24-hour period. And that will apply up to 6 months of age when you start weaning. Obviously, the amount does vary from baby to baby because they're all different. Most babies obviously do settle into a feeding pattern eventually, but they will vary in how often they want to feed and how much they want to feed because they're all different. The amount of formula will change though, so just be aware if your baby is unwell, if they're in pain due to teething, then they might take less, or if they're having something like a growth spurt, then they might take more milk. So there may be times where the volume that you're giving to your baby changes, but roughly aim for 150 to 200 mils per kilo of weight across a 24-hour period, and then divide that across your feeds. So the next question I'm going to jump onto here is, how do I know my baby is getting enough milk? Now this is a common question that I get asked by both breastfeeding and bottle feeding parents, to be honest. Obviously when you're bottle feeding you do know how much milk your baby's taking because you can see that in the bottle that you're giving them. But the number one indicator that your baby's getting enough milk, regardless of how you're feeding, is your baby's weight gain. So if your baby is gaining weight and you're seeing them move up those centile charts in their red child health book, so when you visit the health visitor and baby's weighed, you can see that baby is gaining weight, then that's a clear indicator that baby is getting enough milk. Plenty of heavy wet nappies, so roughly 6 to 8 wet nappies in a 24-hour period, and about 2 to 3 dirty nappies. You may well have a lot more than 2 to 3, but we want to see at least 2 to 3. And then just your baby's general temperament as well. If your baby isn't gaining weight and they're a little bit unhappy after a feed, then that would be a sign that perhaps they're not getting enough milk. So if you're bottle feeding, you might want to pop an extra ounce into there just to give them a little bit extra. If you're breastfeeding or you're feeding express breast milk, then you might want to add in some extra pumping sessions to boost your supply. So moving on, how do I recognise signs of hunger in my baby? So obviously after a while, once you've kind of got to know your baby, you'll get to recognise what their different cries mean and which one is related to hunger. It's totally normal to worry about recognising that when they're first newborn, because obviously, you know, you've both got to kind of get to know each other and recognise what each other needs and what you're telling each other. But the things that you're going to be looking out for is seeing your baby a little bit restless, looking a little bit like a sparrow in a nest with the mouth wide open, fidgeting about, head from side to side, rooting around, so opening their mouth, putting their fist or their fingers into their mouth. So if you see things like that, then that's a clear sign that your baby is hungry and wanting to feed. So try to feed your baby before they get to the point of crying, because that's a sign of late hunger then, and it can be quite difficult to feed sometimes when you get to that stage. So moving on here, next question, when should I change my baby's bottle teats? So all babies start out with a slow flow teat because that's obviously what they can manage when they're first newborn. We don't want to give them anything too fast because that would cause things like colic and gas and overfeeding, and actually you probably wouldn't get much of the feed going down into their tummies. So you're going to stay with a slow flow teat until around about 8 to 12 weeks of age. At that time, you're then going to move up to a medium flow teat, and then you will stay with that until around 5 to 6 months of age, when you will go up to a fast flow teat. Now remember, every baby's different, so some babies might like their feed a little bit slower, some might like it a little bit faster. So if you change the flow of your teat and you find that your baby's not coping well with it, then go back to the original flow, stay with that for another month and then try again. There are also some extra special kind of teats available out there. So there's extra slow flow, which is useful for babies that are born a little bit premature, and there are also kind of speciality teats for babies who are on thickened formula for things things like reflux and colic. So next question I have been asked this month: do I need to pump at the same time every day? So yes, ideally, if you're wanting to pump express breast milk, then you need to pump at the same time every day so that your body gets that message that it needs to increase your milk supply at that time and that there is an increased demand. So moving on, how long should a bottle feed take? Every baby is different, of course. Some babies are little guzzlers and they'll drink really fast and you'll be done in kind of like 10 to 15 minutes. Other babies are really slow and they'll fidget about, mess about with the teat a little bit, and they might take 20 to 30 minutes. But on average, you're going to be around about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, if your baby drains that bottle within 5 minutes, then that's an indicator that the flow of the teat is too fast. If they take something like 40-45 minutes, then that's an indicator that the flow of the teat is perhaps a little bit too slow. So you need to consider changing the teat then to meet baby's needs. So just finally then here, how should I clean Milky Meter after use? So when you've finished with it, then simply wipe it over with an antibacterial wipe and pop it to one side to keep it safe for next time. Okay, that's it for this month. If you want to send me any messages, then please do send me a message through the Milky Meter Facebook or Instagram pages, and I will come back to you, and I will be back next month with the next lot of common questions. Okay, bye-bye.